Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
In a world where nearly 2 billion Muslims fight for acceptance, some countries turn their backs, subjecting their very identities to relentless scrutiny and hostility.
We will not receive even one Muslim.
Welcome to a shocking reality check in 2024, where being Muslim can feel like navigating a treacherous minefield filled with restrictions and danger at every turn. From Slovakia's ban on Islamic symbols to halal food being illegal in some countries. Join us as we dive into the countries where Muslims are not welcome in 2024. Slovakia. Islam has no place in Slovakia. This bold statement from former Prime Minister Robert Fico sent shockwaves through the nation. It revealed the growing tension over religious diversity in this mostly Christian land. Slovakia's culture shines in its folk art, traditional music, and lively festivals, where locals proudly wear embroidered costumes and celebrate with dances passed down through generations. With around 5.4 million folks calling it home, Slovakia is mostly Roman Catholic, with over 80% of its people proudly embracing this vibrant faith. From bright festivals like the Vyšudna Folklore Festival and the Feast of St. Nicholas to heartwarming traditions, every corner of Slovakia is alive with the sounds of its Christian roots. However, these festivals and traditions aren't the only thing that makes Slovakia exciting. Besides the mostly Christian crowd, a small yet interesting Muslim community of about 5,000 people also exists, making up less than 0.1% of the total population. Their ancestors first arrived in Slovakia centuries ago with the Ottoman Empire. They were later joined by others from Turkey, Syria, and Bosnia, seeking refuge, work, and a chance to build new lives. However, this tiny community faces some big challenges. For Muslims in Slovakia, there are no official mosques in the country. This makes it feel like Islam isn't really welcome, and it can be pretty lonely. However, the challenges don't stop there. In 2016, something big happened in Slovakia. The government passed a law that shook things up for religious groups. This new law made it much harder for any religion to get official recognition unless they had at least 50,000 followers in the country. This change hit smaller religious communities hard, especially Islam, which doesn't have that many followers in Slovakia. Many people saw the law as a way to block mosques and limit how Islam is practiced in the country. Right now, there's basically a blanket ban on Muslims entering or living in Slovakia. This tough stance has gained a lot of public support, as many Slovaks worry about terrorism, keeping their culture safe, and economic problems. Can you imagine living in a place where fear shapes how people think? Many citizens are concerned that welcoming Muslim migrants could lead to social unrest and even water down the national identity they hold dear. Despite facing discrimination and limited religious recognition, these Muslims still remain rooted in the communities they've built and helped grow. Leaving would mean abandoning homes, friendships, and a sense of belonging they've fought hard to create. For them, living here has become a part of their identities. While Slovakia wrestles with its issues of religious acceptance, the global landscape tells a similar story. In the US, the impact of 9/11 continues to cast a long shadow over the Muslim community. The United States of America. Ever since September 11, 2001, Muslims in the United States have faced an increased level of hostility. That day changed everything. The Islamic extremists carried out a wave of tragic attacks and unleashed a wave of fear and suspicion across the nation. Suddenly, many Americans began to see all Muslims through a fog of suspicion, as if the actions of a few could define an entire faith. Shockingly, about half of the adults in the US believe that Islam promotes violence more than other religions. Many point to verses in the Quran that appear to call for conflict. For instance, Surah Al-Baqarah declares, "And kill them wherever you find them," a line that can sound shocking and suggests that violence is acceptable. Many Islamic scholars explain that these verses were meant for specific situations, not as a blanket approval for violence. This creates a dangerous environment where Muslims feel like they're being watched 24/7. On top of that, at times, they're bombarded with unwanted questions and stares, even in places where they should feel safe. Can you imagine walking into a room and sensing that everyone is thinking the worst of you just because of who you are? This is the harsh reality for many in the Muslim community. What makes it worse is the increasing number of gangs and hate crimes in America against Muslims. According to recent data, Muslims are targeted pretty badly in the US. In 2021, hate crimes against Muslims made up over 10% of all religiously motivated hate crimes, according to the FBI. That's unbelievable, especially when you think about how Muslims are just a little over 1% of the US population. This big gap highlights the real struggles faced by Muslim communities across the country. A survey from the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding in 2022 revealed that 48% of Muslims in the US faced religious discrimination. That's the highest rate of any religious group. Nearly half of Muslims feel targeted just for believing in their faith, and for good reason. This is more than just a number. It's a harsh truth that many people experience daily. On top of that, the Anti-Defamation League found that over 60% of extremist-related murders in the United States in 2023 were linked to white supremacist groups. Some of them act like gangs. These groups see Muslims as a threat to their twisted view of a racially and culturally uniform America. This isn't just a statistic, it's a reality that affects real lives. For example, back in July 2022, the quiet streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico, turned into a scene of fear and horror when 4 Muslim men were shot and unalived in a series of targeted attacks. Muhammad Afzal Hussein, a beloved member of the community, was the first to be shot and unalived, leaving everyone in shock. Just days later, the heartache deepened with the murder of Aftab Hussein, known for his friendly smile and willingness to help others. The community came together to mourn, lighting candles that flickered in the night, symbolizing their sorrow and fear. Whispers of a dangerous killer lurking nearby filled the air, making everyone feel vulnerable. On August 5th, tragedy struck again when Mohammed Anwar, a cherished friend and supporter, was gunned down. Later that evening, as people gathered for a vigil, Naeem Hussein was shot just blocks away a few moments after he left Anwar's vigil. As news spread, the community was filled with grief and anger. These weren't just random shootings. They were the result of a deliberate act against Muslims. Friends and family came together, mourning the loss of their loved ones while trying to make sense of the tragedy. Law enforcement quickly jumped into action, determined to find the perpetrator. After an intense investigation, they arrested a suspect and charged him with the murders. It became clear that these attacks were not isolated incidents, but part of a frightening rise in hate crimes against Muslims and other minority groups in the country. Living in fear is part of everyday life. This hate not only stirs up anger, it adds to the fears and worries of Muslims trying to fit into a society that can feel unfriendly. As the US confronts its struggles with discrimination, a chilling parallel unfolds in China, where ethnic cleansing threatens the very essence of cultural identity and community. China. China is a nation renowned for its rapid progress, dazzling tech innovations, and ancient history. However, beneath the high-speed trains and glittering skylines, a darker reality unfolds. While China pushes forward, making strides in technology and industry, it remains alarmingly backward in its treatment of the Uyghur Muslims. Under the banner of security and peacekeeping, the Chinese government uses invasive surveillance tactics on the Uyghur population. Fingerprints, DNA tests, even facial recognition software, tracking their every move. In recent years, Xinjiang has turned into a hotspot for human rights issues, where reports reveal awful abuses. There are about 25 million Muslims in China, which are mostly made up of two interesting groups, the Hui and the Uyghurs. The Hui Muslims can be found all over the country. They blend in with different communities while proudly keeping their special traditions alive. In the northwest, the Uyghurs stand out with their rich customs and colorful heritage that's been passed down for centuries. Sadly, though, the Uyghur community in Xinjiang is facing serious challenges. Compared to the Hui, who ethnically belong to the Han lineage and practice Islam, the Uyghurs are a Turkic ethnic group. Their distinct cultural and linguistic identity challenges the Han Chinese dominance. As a result, they are discriminated against more than the Hui. Uyghurs find their freedom of speech taken away, their cultural traditions crushed, and their very identities at risk. They live in fear, knowing someone is always watching them. There's more, though. The government calls it re-education camps. More than 1 million Uyghurs are held in these places, facing harsh treatment aimed at erasing their culture and beliefs. Being taken from their families and thrown into a place that tries to change who they are is a nightmare for many Uyghurs. Living here means dealing with one of the strictest surveillance systems in the world, and unsurprisingly, the Chinese government doesn't stop there. They fill neighborhoods with police while imposing severe restrictions on Islamic practices. Simple acts like fasting during Ramadan, wearing traditional clothes, and going to the mosque are tightly controlled. It's like being told you can't celebrate your most important holidays or show who you really are. For many Uyghurs, this loss of religious freedom leaves them feeling alone and exposed. What's worse is that they can't even leave the country if they want to. You see, China imposes strict travel restrictions on Uyghurs, limiting their ability to obtain passports and travel permits. Even if they do manage to leave, they often face pressure to return due to the threat of family reprisals or fear of repercussions against relatives who remain in China. While China's celebrations often overshadow the struggles of its Muslims, Bhutan's focus on happiness comes with a chilling byproduct for its small Muslim community. Bhutan. Bhutan, the magical Himalayan kingdom known for prioritizing gross national happiness over mere economic growth, presents a beautiful facade of well-being and contentment. Yet amid this fascinating focus on happiness, the country grapples with an uncomfortable truth. It treats its small Muslim community unfairly. With around 800,000 people, Bhutan is mostly Buddhist, with most following Tibetan Buddhism. This strong, spiritual way of life shapes the culture, festivals, and daily life in this peaceful land. Hold on though, there's more to Bhutan's story. Among the colorful mix of Bhutanese society, a small Muslim group of around 5,000 to 7,000 people adds a unique flavor to the culture. This small Muslim community in Bhutan traces its roots to traders from Bengal and India who settled in the region centuries ago. Others arrived as skilled workers, establishing a modest but enduring presence in Bhutan's multicultural landscape. However, here's the twist. Bhutan takes a strict approach to Islamic practices and institutions, which makes life complicated for this small community. Public displays, like the call to prayer or wearing traditional Islamic clothing, are not generally allowed, making it even harder for Muslims to express their beliefs openly. For Bhutan's small Muslim community, practicing their faith often means keeping things quiet in a land where their beliefs are rare. Finding halal food. It's a daily challenge. With only a few options, meals take careful planning and a bit of creativity, turning a simple dinner into an elaborate, well-thought-out task. Adding to this complexity is Bhutan's historical context. You see, Bhutan is deeply committed to protecting its unique identity, built around the values and traditions of Mahayana Buddhism. This small kingdom sees its culture as something precious, something it needs to guard closely to keep the people of Bhutan united. While freedom of religion is allowed, Bhutan prioritizes traditional customs and Buddhist values. This means that it often limits the public practice of other religions, including Islam, to protect this cultural cohesion. It's a way for the country to guard against potential cultural influences that may challenge Bhutan's unique identity. Fears of extremism and a desire to preserve Bhutanese identity lead to hesitancy about embracing Islamic practices, creating an atmosphere of caution. Imagine living in a place where your beliefs are met with skepticism, and every expression of faith feels like a quiet rebellion. As Bhutan's pursuit of happiness sidelines its Muslim community, extreme nationalism threatens the lives and faith of Muslims in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, a beautiful island in South Asia, is like a world of wonders tucked away in the Indian Ocean. However, it's one of the few countries in the world that has a strict ban on specific types of Muslim clothing. Even though the country is only 65,000 square kilometers, Sri Lanka is home to around 22 million people, each adding to the lively spirit of the place. Most people here are Sinhalese Buddhists, but they share the land with Tamils, Moors, and other groups, each bringing their own customs. The Muslim community, making up about 9.7%, close to 1.9 million people, adds its own vibrant thread to the fabric of this diverse culture. In recent years, life for Sri Lanka's Muslim community has become more difficult. Rising tensions fueled by extreme nationalist groups have been spreading negative views about Muslims. The turning point? The 2019 Easter Sunday bombings, a shocking act by a radical Islamist group that left the nation in disbelief. The bombings were a series of coordinated terrorist attacks targeting churches and hotels, resulting in the loss of lives of over 267 people and significant societal chaos. The aftermath of the bombings sent shockwaves through Sri Lanka, unleashing a wave of fear and anxiety among the mainly Buddhist Sinhalese population. In a bid to regain safety, the government banned the burqa and niqab as part of national security measures, which many viewed as unfairly targeting the Muslim community. The government justified its ban on the burqa and niqab by saying that these full-face coverings made it hard for law enforcement to identify people, especially in sensitive situations. They emphasized the urgent need to protect public safety. At the same time, the government claimed this decision would help strengthen national identity and unity. On top of that, reports of mosque inspections soared, and there was a push for tougher rules on halal food. This created a feeling among Muslims that they were under a constant spotlight, and their faith was questioned at every turn. Just like Sri Lanka grapples with rising nationalism, India faces the harsh reality of Hindu nationalist extremism, threatening the safety of its Muslim community. India. India's colorful culture contrasts sharply with the dangerous fight many Muslims face for citizenship. This, in turn, leaves them feeling unsafe in their own homeland. As the seventh largest nation by land area, India became the most populated country in the world, surpassing China in 2023 with a stunning population of over 1.4 billion people. Among this huge crowd, the Muslim community is significant, with over 200 million Muslims living in India as of 2024. That's about 15% of the population. Yet this colorful landscape has faced its share of challenges. Tensions are rising, and conflict is in the air. India has seen growing friction between its Hindu majority and Muslim minority in recent years. The rise of Hindu nationalism has created a climate where many Muslims face discrimination and, sadly, even violence. One of the most talked about issues in India today is the Citizenship Amendment Act, introduced in 2019. This law has sparked huge debates and protests across the country. The Citizenship Amendment Act only allows non-Muslim refugees from neighboring countries to apply for Indian citizenship. This means that Muslims are explicitly being excluded from a pathway to citizenship in India. This not only undermines their status as equal citizens, but also fuels discrimination and social tensions. As if that wasn't bad enough, alongside the Citizenship Amendment Act, a troubling trend has emerged: anti-Muslim comments from some political leaders and media outlets. These statements often paint Muslims in a bad light, creating divisions and spreading fear. One of the most alarming events took place in Delhi in 2020, where violent riots resulted in widespread chaos, fatalities, and several injuries. It was primarily fueled by communal tensions surrounding the Citizenship Amendment Act and anti-Muslim sentiments. This heartbreaking situation reminded everyone just how serious these issues are, leaving many Muslims feeling unsafe and unprotected in their own country. However, while India struggles with anti-Muslim tensions, the Central African Republic is torn by a civil war where Muslim communities endure devastating violence and forced displacement. Central African Republic. Imagine waking up to a land once full of promise and hope. However, now it's overshadowed by the scars of a brutal civil war that began in 2013. What's worse is that it continues to leave countless Muslims in peril even today. The Central African Republic is a hidden treasure in the heart of Africa, alive with culture and excitement. Yet for many Muslims, the terrain has become increasingly hostile, marked by tensions and dangers that make daily life a struggle for safety and peace. This landlocked country is surrounded by Chad, Sudan, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with about 5.5 million people calling it home. However, don't let its small size fool you. It's bursting with life and incredibly diverse communities. In the Central African Republic, Christianity is the main faith, with around 80% of people identifying as Christian. Now, as of June 2024, Islam is the second largest religion in the Central African Republic, with around 750,000 Muslims making up about 8.9% of the population. However, life for Muslims in the Central African Republic has been an uphill battle. Since 2013, the country has been shaken by religious conflict that has led to a brutal civil war. For most Muslims, facing daily life shaped by violence has become an unsettling norm. The conflict mainly involves the Muslim Seleka rebels fighting against the mostly Christian anti-Balaka militias. This conflict started when the Muslim-led Seleka rebel group overthrew President Francois Bozizé, driven by anger over poor governance and the neglect of Muslim communities. However, their actions unleashed a firestorm. In response, predominantly Christian anti-Balaka militias sprang into action, retaliating with fierce violence that only escalated the chaos. This brutal back-and-forth deepened ethnic and religious tensions, trapping the nation in a relentless cycle of conflict that still wreaks havoc today. This extreme amount of violence has sparked a massive displacement crisis. Thousands of people are now classified as internally displaced persons or refugees, desperately seeking safety in other areas or even fleeing to neighboring countries. Sadly, for them, every day is a struggle for survival. Shocking reports reveal several targeted attacks against Muslim communities, with numerous other areas facing accusations of ethnic cleansing. However, while the Central African Republic grapples with strife, Angola's rich culture masks wealth concentrated among a few, deliberately excluding Muslims from opportunity. Angola. Trying to fulfill your sacred duty of prayer can feel impossible when zoning laws in Angola block access to places of worship. As a country, Angola is a place where different groups like the Ovimbundu, Kimbundu, and Bakongo come together to create an incredible blend of cultures and norms. Festivals here burst with energy, music fills the air, and the smell of delicious local food makes your mouth water. However, all this buzz is just a small part of it. While most people in Angola are Christians, there's also a fascinating Muslim community that ties in well with the country's various cultures. As of July 2024, around 990,000 Muslims live in Angola, making up about 2.5% of the total population. Many of these Muslims come from West Africa or have Lebanese roots, bringing their own special traditions to the country. This makes it a dazzling land where sparkling cultures and diverse communities thrive. However, lurking beneath this colorful surface are some serious hurdles faced by the Muslim community that you wouldn't believe exist. You could be in a bustling market filled with lively chatter and delicious aromas, but finding halal food feels like searching for a needle in a haystack. Just when you think it can't get tougher, government policies and local rules throw in more obstacles. Zoning laws complicate the construction of mosques, making it feel like building a sandcastle without the right tools. Job opportunities for Muslims are clouded by a deep economic divide that keeps wealth in the hands of just a few groups, specifically the mestizos. Many Muslims, especially in rural areas, struggle with few resources and high unemployment. You see, these powerful groups do have strong networks that people can use to secure jobs and political power. Unfortunately, they keep these connections for themselves, effectively shutting out marginalized communities like the Muslims. In Angola, the struggle is real for Muslims trying to practice their faith openly. While the constitution says there's religious freedom, the lack of recognition for Islam as an official religion creates big challenges. Considering all that, it's not shocking that Muslims receive little to no representation in the government as well. These hurdles reveal deeper issues of inclusion and acceptance that resonate throughout the nation. While Angola's rich culture dazzles, the struggle for its Muslim community is echoed in Japan, where navigating faith in a sea of traditions can be just as tough. Japan. Did you know that despite being a technological powerhouse, Japan has one of the lowest immigration rates among developed countries? Japan is an amazing country where old traditions meet modern life. You'll find beautiful tea ceremonies, exciting kabuki theater shows, and lively festivals like Hanami, where everyone gathers to enjoy the cherry blossoms. This colorful culture blends history with exciting new ideas. With over 98% of the people being ethnically Japanese, this country has a unique culture. However, the real twist is that the Muslim community in Japan, which includes around 100,000 to 200,000 people, adds another lively touch to this mix. This group includes expatriates and Japanese converts, and they add to the country's diversity. However, they face a number of difficulties when it comes to practicing their faith. Finding halal food in Japan can feel like an actual treasure hunt. You see, while Japan is famous for its tasty dishes, like okonomiyaki and ramen, many restaurants don't have halal options. This means Muslims must search hard for meals that fit their diet. They often rely on a few special restaurants or grocery stores, which can be tough, especially in smaller cities with fewer Muslims. However, that's just part of the story. The challenge continues with not enough mosques and prayer places. How do you balance faith and a busy life in such a fast city? Many Muslims want to join community events, but struggle with it because there aren't enough prayer spots nearby. Celebrating Islamic holidays in Japan can be quite the struggle as well. Take Ramadan, for example. During this holy month, Muslims fast from dawn until sunset, and breaking the fast with iftar is a special tradition. However, finding good places to enjoy iftar can be tricky. Many restaurants don't open until late, and halal options are often limited. It can end up being really frustrating. Now, finding halal food in Japan might be a scavenger hunt, but in North Korea, practicing Islam is like walking a tightrope without a safety net. North Korea. In a place like North Korea, faith itself can be a weapon for the state. North Korea is often described as one of the most secretive and isolated countries in the world, like a locked box hidden away from the outside. Ruled by the Kim family, this country controls almost every part of life. From what people can say to how they spend their free time, the government runs it all. Now, when it comes to religion, things get even stricter. In North Korea, people have almost no freedom to practice their faith, and that includes the tiny Muslim community, which is only about 0.1% of the total population. Cut off from the outside world, they find themselves in a barren landscape, stripped of essential Islamic resources, community support, and educational materials about their faith. With around 25 million people, that means there are only a few Muslims living there. How do they keep their faith in such a harsh place? The government allows only state-approved religious activities, which means there's no room for independent Islamic practices. Practicing Islam in North Korea is like trying to dance with no music. It's nearly impossible. With no mosques and a total lack of halal food, daily Islamic rituals like prayer and following dietary rules become a major challenge. The government controls every part of life, so practicing their faith can feel nearly impossible. It's like entering a world where the rules are carved in stone and there's no room for flexibility. North Korea's official ideology, Juche, tells a gripping story of self-reliance and loyalty to the state, with the Kim family seen as almost divine figures. However, the real question is what happens when faith runs into power. This strong belief system leaves no room for other ideologies, especially religions like Islam. In a country where the leader is almost worshipped as a god, the idea of different faiths living together isn't just unthinkable, it's incredibly dangerous for the regime's future. Any practice that doesn't fit with state interests is met with suspicion and hostility. Why does this happen? Because the ruling elite often see Islam as a foreign threat, especially from countries like the United States and South Korea. This mindset creates a toxic atmosphere where the government stirs up hate against Islam, painting it as a danger to their tightly controlled society. It's a place where something as simple as your personal beliefs could lead to some serious trouble. In this carefully crafted world of a unified society, there's no room for different beliefs. The North Korean government promotes an image of unity, pushing out not just Muslims, but any faith that could challenge its power. The international community is watching closely, worried about the lack of religious freedom in North Korea. Human rights organizations and advocacy groups are on the front lines, shining a spotlight on the struggles faced by religious minorities in this tightly controlled society. They work day and night to raise awareness and advocate for those who cannot speak out for themselves. Just when you think things couldn't get tougher for the Muslim community, let's dive into Myanmar, where the challenges are like a never-ending storm. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.